everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Historical Belle. I am Marie of Historical Belle, and thank you so much for clicking on that thumbnail to view this video today. Today I am going to be making Regency era long stays. So these stays would have been used in about 1805 to 1830. Regency generally refers to early 1800s in England. In America, we say that it's the Federalist time period. In literature, it is the Jane Austen era. But basically, it all means that it is the early 1800s. And I haven't done a whole lot of costuming in the early 1800s. I like the early 1800s. I think they're fun. Like costume-wise, society-wise, it's always troubling. Here's my kitty. Kitty. Come here. We all know you're a camera hog. And that's okay. Lucky wants to come say hi. She doesn't look like it, but she is purring right now. Sewing vlogs are some of her favorite things because it means that I'm down here basically all day sewing with her. Yes, it does. So I haven't really done a whole lot in the early 1800s, but of course with the Bridgerton topping the charts and being so popular, there's a lot of historical costuming events that are Bridgerton themed. My historic dance troupe is putting on a ball, and I'm also going to go to the Bridgerton experience, the Queen's Ball. And for that I would like to have stays. And I will also be making, you know, a ball gown to go with it. But that's later. Made stays before. I've never made a corset before. I've never tried to do either. I have them, of course, but I have purchased them from various sutlers, corset makers, Etsy shops, because the thought of making stays always scared me. And it scared me because when I first was a little baby historical costumer, a little baby reenactor, and like, I say that because like I was just starting out, but also like I was just a kid. I think I started when I like historical reenacting when I was maybe around like 12, 13. The ladies who were there, some of them, basically warned me off against making stays or corsets of any kind. They were like, it's so hard, like never try it, and that has stuck with me for like the past decade. So just, you know, when you're giving advice to newbies, don't scare them. Like, you know, you can be like, it's more difficult. Like, maybe, you know, try something first before you do that. But I got the red threaded corset pattern and I looked at it and I was like, this doesn't look too hard. Like, it looks pretty simple. And I got there, of course, I'm starting with Regency era stays, which I think are probably some of the most simplest because they are like the most, they're just the most simple. Regency corsets I think are simpler because they have less boning. You don't have to sew as many boning channels. That makes sense. I do think it's kind of silly that I am more scared to make Regency era stays or stays of any kind than I am to make my own wedding dress, which I successfully did. But I was like, you know what, if I successfully made my wedding dress, which basically had a corset lining in it, I think I can do this. So let's try. Right, Lucky? I appreciate your support. Lucky. I'm using the red threaded Regency Long Stays pattern. Long stays have been featured prominently in many recent Regency dramas, probably because they look more like what most people assume a corset looks like rather than short stays, which more closely resemble a bra. Now, unlike Bridgerton might have you think, Regency stays were just supportive garments used to lift and separate the bust. The goal for a fashionable silhouette was a lifted, separate, round bust. The waist was completely ignored. This has nothing to do with making your waist look smaller. As I said earlier, I'm using the red threaded Regency Long Stays pattern in size medium. But I want to note that this pattern that I'm using in this video is from before the pattern reboot they did. So if you have a newer pattern, there are probably some differences. Of course, the first thing I'll be doing in this making process is cutting out the pattern. And then I'll be cutting out the fabric. I'll be using this white cotton, which is a thrifted bed sheet. Oh, if only laying out a pattern was actually that simple. I will then, of course, cut out the fabric.
So I don't understand why it says the flat lining part is optional. I'm going to do that because I think that makes way more sense, and I don't know honestly how you would do it otherwise. Like, I might just be I'm reading it not right, or at least in my line it makes way more sense to go ahead and to do it together, and to flat line it and have a lining for this. Also, this is the same fabric that I made my Tudor shift out of. So again, thrifted bed sheets for the wind. And now this thrifted bed sheet has become a Tudor era smock and is now becoming Regency era long stays.
I will not be making a mock-up of these long stays because I don't want to. I was kind of surprised at how little fabric a corset or stays actually take to make. It really doesn't take that much fabric. Now, with all the pieces cut out, it is time to pin them together. And as I'm doing this, I'm taking note about where boning channels need to be and all that. And I'm flatlining all of the pieces together that, well, need to be flatlined, but I'm leaving the top and bottom pieces, well, open because I'm going to have to insert boning into that. I'm not sure if I did that right, but it worked. It was then time to put in the gussets. I marked where the gussets went on the top of the stays, and then I made little incisions to where they needed to be, and I inserted these cute little triangles of fabric into their proper place. These gussets are going to help with the liftedness and the roundness of the bust, which is crucial to the silhouette of this era. If we take a look at stays from just a few decades before in the 1780s, this is a picture from the Red Threaded website. You can also order a pattern or these stays from that website, and it is modeled by the beautiful Dames a la Mode. But as you can see here, the bust is compressed. It is not round. It is funneled into a cylinder shape, which was popular for a large part of the 18th century. And that's one of the things that makes the Regency era so unique, is that silhouettes like this have not been seen for thousands of years. The silhouette of the early Regency era is really supposed to emulate those found in classical Greece and Rome, as people really believe that they are bringing in a new era of enlightenment and democracy, and they want to express that through their clothing. So of course there were 4 gussets in total. I pinned them all in, and then I took them to my sewing machine and I stitched them all in. But after that, I did hand finishing on all of the seams around these gussets because I found that to be necessary. I just didn't feel like I had the control with the machine to finish them the way that I wanted to. And it also helps for the authenticity of this garment, as we are making stays in the Regency era and sewing machines hadn't really been invented yet. There was like one person who had an idea about how to stitch leather together. That happened in the late 1700s, but it really didn't go anywhere. It was not practical. We don't really see sewing machines the way that we think of them until the 1840s. So having nice little hand stitches around the gussets of this garment really helped bring an authentic air that it had been lacking up until this point. All right, now that I have the top gussets done, it is time to put gussets on the bottom sides. Again, I marked where the gussets needed to go with pins, and then I went ahead and just, snipped away, made a little incision in the fabric so that the gusset could be inserted. The gussets on the bottom of these stays are, of course, larger, as there is more of a flare on the hip than there is with the bust. I again sewed these in with my machine and then hand finished them. Finally, the stays are actually taking shape. They look like they can actually go on my body now once I've pinned these sides together. But there is one last set of gussets that need to go into these side seams because, well, I got hips. I am then going to, of course, attach the back pieces that also have the strap that come around to the front. They just have one long seam down the back there. So it's pretty easy to just pin that together and then sew it. Now that everything is together, I went and gave everything a good press with the iron because we're about to start the incredibly tedious process of placing boning channels. So I outlined where all of the boning channels needed to go with a blue fabric marker pen. Then I went back and I pinned the center of the boning channel so that it wouldn't move when I sewed it, because I want to make sure both layers are sitting perfectly. But this took a very long time. I was originally doing it with my fabric tape measurer, but then I switched to a wooden ruler, which was a little bit easier. Also, trying to pin things with cat in your lap. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Lucky was very involved in the making of these stays. If you cannot tell, I required a lot of supervision since this is my first time ever making stays, and she was there to provide that support. Now, if there was one thing that was more tedious than marking out all of the places where I had to sew for the boning channels, it was actually sewing them. And of course, I kind of had to roll the stays to make sure they would fit through my sewing machine and, not accidentally get caught on one another. It was easy enough to do, but it was just very tedious. Once all of the boning channels were sewed, I, of course, had to rinse out the stays in the bathroom sink to get all the blue markings out, and then I ironed it yet again. And don't worry, all of the blue markings came out just like the pen instructions said they would. Now, the moment that we have all been waiting for! We are going to add the boning to the stays. I use some just regular old boning from Joann's fabric store, and I do regret that. Yes, I do. I regret it a little bit because it came in a circle, and it was very circular, and it did not want to lose that shape as a circle. So I was making... It was making my corset lay really, really weird. I had to use some books to help weigh down the curvature of the corset. If I had to go back and do this again, I think I would pay a little bit of extra money and buy boning that is specifically made for corsets, or even zip ties that are straight. I wouldn't use this boning again. So that is something that I learned the hard way. Please learn from my mistakes, so you too do not have to weigh down your stays with classic literature. To bind the stays, I had some bias binding tape, and it's just what I had on hand. So I went ahead and used it to complete the look, and it worked really well. I always thought that this would be a harder part of the process, but it really wasn't. It was pretty easy, if not just a little bit tedious, but it made everything look so much better. The last thing that I had to do was to attach the busk pocket. I ironed it on all of the sides to make sure that it had nice, pretty finish edges, and then I attached it to the inside of the stays. I pinned it down in the center where the pattern said it should be, and then I stitched it down with my machine. Now the sewing bit is done, and I have to set grommets to lace up the back. Now I've never done grommets before. I had to buy a setter and I had to buy grommets. So I went ahead and I marked where each of the grommets were supposed to go according to the pattern, and then also nicely spacing them out with my ruler. I realized that it took considerable hand strength to use the grommet setter, which I don't really have. So I asked my wonderful husband if he could do it, because he has way better hand strength and just general upper body strength than I do, and he was the best and inserted my grommets for me.
Best husband, the best husband. It's the best husband in the world.
That's me. Dun, 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 dun.
So he was the best, and he installed all of my grommets. It was the first time he had ever done this, but he did a great job.
So Red Threaded has busks, wooden busks that you can buy to go with their corset patterns. But I had read about how sometimes lovers would carve special things into the busks, so I thought it would be really sweet if I ended up getting like a more specialized busk. So therefore I went on to Etsy to see just what there was, and I came across this lovely busk that you could personalize and get like to your exact shape and everything. Well, it's about the same shape, but like length was customizable. So I got it. Now it just came, so let's unwrap it. It's beautiful. Oh, I love it. So this one isn't carved, but it's like burned in. So of course there's a sweet heart on the top here. And then I got the year 1811 because that's the year that my favorite Jane Austen novel, Sense and Sensibility, was published. And then I have my husband's initials and then my maiden name initials here as well, because I mean, we just got married in 2022. We weren't married in 1811, so. And then it has this beautiful little dot pattern and a flower. So I love that. Now let's make sure it goes and fits in my corset. It should. I got it the right dimensions that the pattern said to, but let's go try it on.
So this is the first time that I'm wearing the Regency Stays, and I've worn like mid-Victorian corsets before, and I've worn 17th century stays before that is very much more in a cone shape, more like a V, and this is like, it feels so loose compared to all of that, because of course it has boning, it has support, but it feels very, very different. It's much lighter. The only thing that really is like, oh, I'm better stand up straight, is having this busk in the front. It makes it to where, you know, you can't slouch, you know, you got to stick right here. You know, you can't like bend over because, you know, you have a stick. So this helps with the posture, but that's really like the main thing that's feel like it's keeping me upright. Also, having the busk also helps with having, you know, we don't want any mono boobs, you know, we have two boobs, and they are separated and they are lifted, which is the hallmark of the Regency silhouette. I think it's really easy to kind of forget that the corset or the stays is really important in the Regency era, because we just think about like, oh, it looks like so much like a bra, the short stays do, or the dresses are so flowy, like it doesn't matter if you have the correct undergarments. And like, yeah, you can get away with that, like pretty easy. But I know for me, who also thought that when starting Regency costuming, and then trying on my dresses with the stays, it makes such a difference. It really does. And it makes me feel like, oh yes, like I have like the correct silhouette now. Like it really does make a difference. So I'm really happy to finally add this to my wardrobe. And also, I'm really proud of myself for making my first ever stays. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below your favorite part, or if you've ever made a corset or stays before, I'd love to hear about your experience. Be sure to tune in next time when I make a historically accurate Bridgerton ball gown. Until next time.